Raise your hand if you think you need AI on your smartphone. Really? What do you want to do? What do you want to do with it? I thought we'd get the opposite response. Obviously you work at Qualcomm, which makes chips that power smartphones and other things. But it's not just a phone-based application. But why don't you answer that question? Why should we have AI capabilities on our phones?
Great question. I was questioning the same statement for 20 years. As I started my journey, when I was starting doing the Droid phones about 20 years ago. Hopefully you guys still remember that. And the first product requirement I got when I was designing the first Motorola Droid phone was a single line saying that it needs to be small and needs to place calls. That's it. I said, from then, the last 20 years, the concept of phone has changed with a very strong prefix called a smartphone. Obviously, smartness comes with a lot of things in it, with AI being one among them. And obviously, when a smartphone had come in, the intention was all about taking photographs, was all about taking videos, making things better, capturing a lot more details under the table kind of thing. And most recently, as my 65-year-old mom keeps suggesting, it also helps remove wrinkles in her face for all her selfies that she can post to her social channels. So I'm excited because she's excited. It has come a long way, for sure, on how AI and smartphones has really improved on consumer experience. But we've also kind of gone from, I would say, vision-based use cases into productivity, wherein you have a lot more interaction using voice, as an example. You don't need to be using your thumb and be an expert typing all kind of stuff using a virtual keyboard. Using voice as a command, can it start invoking certain applications of your choice? Can you also use voice as an example to come up with enhancing productivity in terms of, I would say, summarizing notifications or coming up with suggestive replies? And I use this all the time because I'm more than 90% always forget that I need to pick up kids from school. And I need to come up with innovative experience.
90%?
90%. So I need to come up with some innovative excuses for my wife. And she's tired, right? So I use my AI assistant on my phone to really suggest, what should I be the excuse this time? I'm there, not there fully. I'm almost there. So I would say, from a Qualcomm perspective, we have been investing a lot on actually making sure how AI adds value to the user. In the space of consumer experiences, could be content creation, content consumption, and productivity. And I kind of showcased some of the examples. We have launched with Samsung, we have launched with Motorola, we have also launched with Vivo, Oppo, Xiaomi, Honor in Asia, and those kind of markets.
So the other thing I think is fascinating is it's not just about the phone, it's about mobility in general, and the edge, as we call it. But talk a little bit about the work you're doing in the automotive space, and the AI really being the interface to understand what's happening in your car in a way that's never been possible before.
Oh, great question. This is something exciting personally for me is I drive a 20-year-old car. I'm just, a fan of it. That was my first car when I was a student.
What kind of car is it?
It's a Honda.
They never die.
They never die, right? So I'm almost close to 100,000 miles. So hopefully I can extend that a little bit more. But one of the biggest challenges I have is every time there's an issue with the car, I need to make sure I understand the color of the light, it blinks on the dashboard, the shape of the light, and the frequency of the light. And then I have to open up my dashboard, open up my 300-page manual, and then depending upon the stats I see, I need to find out exactly what the problem is. And that takes me, give or take, 15 to 20 minutes. And obviously, after driving it for 20 years, now I'm by heart. I can, like an LLM, I can say, okay, exactly this is the problem. And this is what I'm supposed to do. So at Qualcomm, what we're doing is we're working with a lot of tier one automotive manufacturers, and we're trying to see, can the dashboard be intelligent? Can I use voice as a primary interface to talk to the dashboard and suggest, hey, if there's a problem, can it come back and suggest? If I ask a question, hey, can you tell me what the issue is? It comes back and suggests, I believe the issue could be A, B, and C, because the physical large model that's present in the dashboard has been completely trained on the manual of the car. It has a lot of environmental intelligence. It has contextual intelligence and provides you a recommendation that these could be the issues. It also comes back with a further suggestion, suggesting that I think you need to take the car for service. and you have a calendar free on so-and-so date. Do you want me to make a booking? I would say, absolutely, why not? And then you make it happen. So this is, I think, your next level of, I would say, semi-autonomy, wherein the car knows you, understands the context, and is able to provide you a solution. And Qualcomm is actually in the forefront doing all this stuff on silicon. So it's much more faster, easier, and customized.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating example because you're taking, I don't know if you call it a small language model. It doesn't need to answer every question. It doesn't need to give you recipe advice. But it knows what it knows, and it knows this particular data set, and it simplifies the vast knowledge of information and creates an interface where anyone can query it. So it's like, I feel like that model that works in the car, I feel like that same application process is going to be replicated in all sorts of different areas. Maintaining, you could imagine your home having similar features. Doesn't need to be mobile in that case, but it would, just to have that interface is something we've never been able to do before.
Oh, absolutely agree with that. Another personal example is my wife keeps calling me that I'm an LLM because no matter what question she asks, I give her some standard response. Right?
Well, you just admitted to using the LLM to give the responses.
Exactly. Then I said, okay, fine, maybe I need to train myself to be more task-specific and domain-specific, so at least answer the question she's asking for. So I think that's what we do at Qualcomm is now we have kind of transitioned from the hype of large models into really making sure, can we train it? Can we make it customized for a certain domain, for a certain task? And this task could be as simple as heating up your room, heating up your house as you're trying to approach your house. You don't have to go to your app and then say, Ecobee Smart, turn on the heater, I'm approaching the house, and keep it at 70 degrees because it's cold. It understands that I'm on my way home, and it does all these things. So the expectation is with the advent of small language models, obviously you have a lot more user experience enhancements, and it exhibits itself in many ways. It could be in conversational AI, could be in simple tasks like your smart buildings or your smart rooms. And last but not the least, also help me personally in getting the homeworks done for my kids, which I'm supposed to do, but I ask my personal assistant to get it done. So hopefully, that works out too.
What are some of the challenges technologically in running these models on mobile processors? We think about big giant data centers powering ChatGPT and that require these huge server farms. How do you get it to run on a mobile processor? How does it scale there?
A great question. I think one of the biggest challenges historically has been these large models by definition have a very big memory footprint. So the question really becomes is, can I host these models on my mobile or handset devices? When you look at the popular LLM, in this case Llama, which was launched about, I would say, 2 or 3 years ago, the 7 billion version of it occupies about 13 gig of memory. That's a lot. And if you look at most of your phones, hopefully everyone here has Android, not Apple. But if it is Android, it has a higher amount of memory, whereas for Apple, it's smaller. And when you want to host these models on either an 8 GB Apple device or a 12 GB Android device, a 13 gigabyte model won't fit in your RAM, in your memory footprint. It becomes very difficult. So we had to come up with innovative techniques at Qualcomm. We have done this for the last couple of years, wherein we have done a lot of extensive studies to transform a very big model of this size to make it small enough while not losing the accuracy. And we were able to transform that from a 13 gigabyte footprint to a 4 gigabyte footprint, and then it is now available in your smartphones. So that's definitely an issue, and we can kind of continue to improve on it. The second thing is, as I mentioned, again, using my personal example with my wife, is I need to be adaptive. I need to understand what my wife is asking for, and every time I give a wrong answer, I need to update my response the next time she asks the same question. If not, I'm not learning, right? That's what she keeps saying. So the important element is, when you happen to have these models on your handsets or phones, how do you make it adaptive? How can you make it self-aware so that if it's not helping a consumer, if it's not helping a user, how can it change? And that is a little difficult because either you have to have a feedback from the user, either thumbs up or a thumbs down or you suck, something like that. So it takes that feedback and does some kind of an iteration to improve as one element, or it self-learns. At Qualcomm, we're putting a lot of investment to go toward the second option of self-learning, where it understands the responses and then dynamically update that so that the attachment of the user to a smartphone from an AI enablement standpoint continues to increase with time. That's a difficult proposal, a difficult problem we have in hand, and that's what we're kind of putting a lot of focus from our systems team to really push the innovation of AI journey on smartphones.
It seems to me there's also a privacy argument to be made. I know Apple's made a big thing about this. There's certain functions you can perform on your phone that you don't want to leave your phone. Certain encryptions and various. Can you talk a little bit about like the types of applications you would want to be contained in a mobile device?
Yeah, that's a very important area of focus for us at Qualcomm as well, is user privacy and security as well, as you mentioned. Now, you can kind of come in two phases. One phase is if you're doing any kind of biometrics to activate a smart device. A smart device could be a car, a handset, or a PC as an example. Your biometrics, a facial footprint or a thumb footprint, your eye, whatever it is, that biometrics cannot leave the device. It's absolutely important that it resides within the device because that is your footprint that activates your financial transactions, your navigation transactions, whatever may be the case. If that gets compromised, we have a problem. So we at Qualcomm put a lot more emphasis to really make sure that level of information is fully secure. The second portion of it is what we call as PPI or personal index information, which is about your age, your behavioral traits, what do you look at, what do you prefer, those kind of things. And those is important, preferably is because we use that level of information to do what you call as prompt management. So that, when you want to use small language models for personal assistant or chatbots, it understands your emotional intelligence, it understands the contextual intelligence a lot more better, and then provides you a response. We usually call this as personal knowledge graphs, elements around you. And these knowledge graphs, to a large extent, historically has been on the cloud, and now there's been a lot more emphasis on moving the knowledge graphs to the device. When you're trying to do this on device, the critical element is who has access to those knowledge graphs. Can all the applications that you download from the web has access to it? If not, how do you contain that? So that's where at Qualcomm we're putting a lot more focus, working with OS players like Windows, Android, with OEMs like BMW, Microsoft, or Samsung, and then try to see what will be the handshake and how do we get that done. But this is, and I would not say it's a solved solution, but there's a lot of areas of focus that we're putting this year for that, for sure.
So we've talked about phones, we've talked about customized content, we've talked about automotive. Are there any applications that you've seen that are coming down the pike that involve these next generation processors that you're really excited about in a different category or even just new applications in the mobile space?
Yeah, I think the big thing people call these days is all about AI agents. Sounds like a James Bond movie, but these agents is all about wherein you want to go towards an appless environment. In my phone, currently I have, 75 apps, and I tend to forget what applications I even downloaded that for. And it's the same thing for a PC, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same thing for automotive environment. What we're trying to move forward is, can I go towards an agentic flow, wherein based off of voice as a command, it translates my command into an intent, and based off an intent, a certain action is taken. So that way, if I have to compose an email, or if I have to summarize my notifications, or I have to pick up flowers for my wife because I forgot her birthday, something like that, I just have to give a command, an action is taken, and it verifies with me that if this action can be taken, and it goes from there. And the exciting part on top of it is this is all within the device. And how do you expand that concept between device to device? What I mean by saying that is if my phone or a handset is dying out, so I open up my PC, that context is now transitioned from my phone to my laptop. So it knows exactly where it stopped and then continues the conversation. Or if I'm going from my PC and going into my car, that conversation and continued in my car. So that kind of knowledge transfer is very critical, and it really helps from a user perspective. And last but not the least is how do you move towards the cloud? There are going to be always elements wherein edge cannot solve all problems. Though I wish, at Qualcomm we can do it. But if somebody asks me a question about scientific computing or something about the patterns of stars, I have no idea. Right at that point of time, I have to make sure I kind of leverage the appropriate large model, working with the cloud vendor to provide that kind of response. So these are some of the exciting things we're really trying to push for, and hope we can get a lot of them launched much more sooner than later.
Yeah, I love that. We're moving from the apps and the files on a desktop to the field of apps on your mobile phone to just having the intent and communicating with the device, having the need, and then having it perform the function without you having to find ways to navigate to your workplace.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on stage. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.